in transferring the presidency to a disqualified Russian asset. I'm Jessica Denson, and this is Lights On. If you're not already subscribed, please subscribe to the Jessica Denson YouTube channel and turn on notifications so you can always get the most up-to-date notice of when our show is going live. We're here for our Friday live show. I am so grateful to be with you less than 72 hours before our American presidency is set to be taken over by a man who is illegal from jump, who is constitutionally disqualified from assuming that office, a convicted felon, wholly disqualified on so many levels. We're going to have such an amazing conversation today, and I'm going to be joined by someone who is so clear on these issues. Friend of mine, Cliff Cash, one of the organizers with me of the 14th Now movement. So he's on deck to join us soon. But before I do that, I just want to play a clip from President Biden's farewell address this week. It really, it's like, President Biden, are you listening to your own words? Where is the action that you are calling for? Listen to what President Biden says here.
I want to warn the country of some things that give me great concern. This is a dangerous concentration, and that's a dangerous concentration of power in the hands of a very few ultra-wealthy people. And the dangerous consequences if their abuse of power is left unchecked. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms. We must not be bullied into sacrificing the future of our children and our grandchildren. We must keep pushing forward and push faster. There's no time to waste.
Couldn't agree more, President Biden. There is no time to waste. You, my friend, President Biden, and every other public servant in office right now has sworn an oath to protect our Constitution, to defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic. There is no time to waste. There is less than 72 hours before this hostile foreign takeover of the beautiful American democracy that we have cherished and strived to improve over centuries. Are we really just going to stand down and let this happen? My guest today, I know he has some really serious questions about how those in power could be allowing this to happen. I think a lot of us, if you're familiar with this show, you know that we have been honest with you. We have not been sugarcoating and being mindless cheerleaders for the Democratic Party, who has been letting us down since the election by not both looking into the election or demanding that at least our Democratic representatives, who have been such public advocates for democracy, actually uphold their oaths and do what they can and are obligated to do to stop this illegal president from taking power. But President Biden himself, by the obscene but standing ruling of this Supreme Court that we have right now, has unfettered presidential immunity. Unfettered. Why not test the bounds in the best legal interests of this country, in the good faith interests of preserving our democracy? Test those limits in the next 72 hours. Anybody in power should be testing those limits. While Democrats have been so both carefully playing by the rules and scared to death of optics, Republicans literally steamroll every rule in the book, don't give a crap about how anything looks, and are in constant projection mode. I was thinking about this issue of projection and gaslighting, and how those in the quote unquote pro-democracy space were so clear about telling people for the past 8 years that Donald Trump was a projectionist, that everything that he said was a projection. It was gaslighting. He was telling you that his enemy was doing what he himself is doing. That is his MO. But yet, when this man won all 7 swing states before we went to sleep on election night, and we had all of these anomalies, bomb threats, Elon Musk saying he knew how to rig an election or knew how easy hacking was, Donald Trump saying he didn't need votes, countless people saying their vote didn't show up, and there were all kinds of anomalies in the voting process that Democrats could not see the gaslighting in effect, that a man who tried to steal our election 4 years ago and claimed that the other party was trying to steal it from him might not actually try to do it himself. Can you imagine? Are you going to be honest about that continued gaslighting now when it matters most, when it literally is affecting the future of the free world? I, for one, have zero confidence, because we have not done our due diligence, that Donald Trump even won this election legitimately. And we are going forward. We are going forward with our public servants who we thought were there to protect us and defend democracy, seemingly standing down in this most vital hour. Now, I'm aware that there's some theories out there that there may be some last minute plans to save us all. I got to tell you guys, I don't adhere to these theories. I don't believe that something like this has happened. If it's true, I will be the most pleasantly surprised and elated person on the planet, and so glad to admit that I was wrong. But I honestly don't see it coming. And that's why I'm continuing my just disbelief that we wouldn't be taking action right now, that anybody with a position to do what needs to be done to save our republic would not be acting. So this is the time, less than 72 hours to do it. And we have every reason in the world to take every measure possible to protect our democracy. One more several hundred-page list of reasons came from Special Prosecutor Jack Smith this week. He, of course, has stepped down from his position, but the first volume of his report, the report that pertains to Donald Trump's crimes against democracy, the ones relating to his deadly insurrection on January 6th, the reason he is disqualified from office, that report came out earlier this week. And it was particularly interesting for me to look over this one section of the table of contents. I'll just put it up on the screen here. It's titled The Principles of Federal Prosecution. And the subsection A says, prosecuting Mr. Trump served multiple substantial federal interests. I'm going to read through them to you. And as I'm reading through them to you, just think about the lack of prosecution is undermining these substantial federal interests. The abandonment of this prosecution is such a danger to our republic. So here are those reasons. One, the substantial federal interest in protecting the integrity of the electoral process and the peaceful transfer of power was served by Mr. Trump's prosecution. Two, the substantial federal interest in counting every citizen's vote was served by Mr. Trump's prosecution. Three, the substantial federal interest in protecting election officials and other government officials from violence was served by Mr. Trump's prosecution. Four, the substantial federal interest in the even-handed administration of the law was served by Mr. Trump's prosecution. Is that not reason enough? And there you had President Biden in that clip I played for you, talking about how vitally important accountability was, and for no one to be above the law. And yet he appointed Merrick Garland, who slow-walked this prosecution to the 11th hour, where we now have no prosecution of this man. We have no prosecution of a man who led a deadly insurrection to stay in power against the will of the people. And, by the way, so gaslit his opponents that he was likely able to do the very thing that he was accusing them of doing 4 years later. What a sick and dangerous place that we are in. What a very, very dangerous place. We don't have to be in it. People right now have the tools still in their possession to do something about this. Do they have the courage? Do they have the will? Frankly, Mr. President, what do you have to lose, President Biden? I really genuinely believe, despite my differences with him on policy and decisions he's made, I genuinely believe that President Biden is a good man. What do you have to lose, Mr. President? Put those aviators on. Be that dark Brandon that the cheerleaders out there have portrayed you to be. And for God's sakes, do something heroic that you will be lauded for, that generations will call you a hero for in your last days in office as president. I want to take a moment before I bring in Cliff to just acknowledge the beautiful community that has come together, both for 14th Now and for rejecting the gaslighting and being committed to a genuine investigation of this election and knowing the truth about it. You are on the right side of history. Your place will be acknowledged. Your place will be noted for generations to come. And it matters so much. It has made such an imprint, despite some people not wanting to cover it or give it airtime. They cannot hide what you have done. They cannot overshadow it or diminish it at all. It is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I'll just put a picture up here on the screen. This is Cliff in Franklin Park about 2 Fridays ago, leading off our 14th Now, 3-day 14th Now protest in DC. It was such a beautiful display of patriotism, of citizens not willing to stand back and be silent when the future of the free world is at stake. And we let those Congress people know of their constitutional duty. They may have disregarded us, but they can never deny that they knew what they had to do. And, frankly, as I've thought about this over the past week or so, since January 6th, really, and thought about all of the media out there who claims to be pro-democracy, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's in mainstream, and them, going out and speaking, having their takes of outrage about what MAGA is doing or about the confirmation hearings, as if we should be shocked that a sexual abuser is nominating a sexual abuser to be, the head of the Department of Defense, and thinking about how they just either completely ignored the 14th Amendment issue or ran counter information to provide cover for the lawmakers who would not uphold their oaths. And I've just been thinking about how dangerous that behavior really is, and how you really have to acknowledge that, because they are essentially normalizing the abandonment of the rule of law that is about to take place. They are normalizing it by not covering the important things, the difficult but important things that need to be done, and providing cover for their friends in the Democratic Party who do not want to make those difficult decisions. That's a very dangerous position to take. So please choose your information sources wisely. Please be careful who you give your money to, who you're supporting, who's, the network I used to be on, they're run by multimillionaires and they beg people for money incessantly. Think about where you are putting your support and your money. Please, my friends, talk about an oligarchy. I mean, some of these people are extremely rich to be, putting themselves out there as pro-democracy, creators, content creators of the people, when they are really just enriching themselves off of Donald Trump hot takes and MAGA hot takes. Is that really going to do anything for us? Has it done anything for us thus far? Really ask yourself that question, and please be very discerning about where you put your money and your support. I'm going to have a little bit more to say on that topic towards the end of the show. And as always, I'm going to share some of your comments because they're some of the best. I'm also going to share some of the incredible outgrowth of 14th Now, some other organizations that have taken shape, and just beautiful efforts out there for many people to be involved in. So all of that is coming up. But for now, please join me in welcoming my friend and 14th Now organizer, co-organizer, Cliff Cash. Cliff, welcome to Lights On.
Hello, thanks for having me. Good to see you.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for dressing up for me. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. It wasn't completely for you.
Okay.
I should have just said you're welcome. I'm about to do it. I'm about to do a theater. I'm a stand-up comic, as you know, letting the crowd know I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm about to do a show in a theater, so I always try and wear a sport coat when I do a theater.
Nice. I told Cliff, I said, when we organized 14th Now, I said we should encourage everybody to show up, looking really nice. And Cliff showed up on that first day in a suit, a nice tailored winter jacket. He was perfect. So presentation matters, and I appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet.
So, Cliff, listen, I know this is such a serious time for all of us, and you have some very strong thoughts, as do I, about where we are. Maybe you can just start off with your reaction to Congress's failure on January 6th.
Yeah, it is a very serious time. It's a very very heavy time. It's, as a stand-up comic, it's been really hard for me to get up on stage and be funny, because I do not feel funny or lighthearted or hopeful. I feel more stressed out and anxious and just kind of heart gut wrenching feeling than I ever have felt in my life. Um, as far as Congress, I was sort of thinking about this in between when you asked me to be on, and now what I wanted to say. And one of the things that really stuck with me from the day that we were in DC was there was several older women, and we count so much on women in general in the Democratic Party, and especially older women. And men too, but women really step up over and over, a lot more so than men oftentimes, and it's really disappointing to see. But I'm always proud of them. And there were several older women at the protest that day, and one of them had like a walker slash cane contraption, and it was very clear that she had mobility issues. And I kept saying, "Hey, do you want to sit down right here? Do you want to sit down right here?" And finally, I stopped asking her because it was so clear to me she wants to stand up. She she's not willing to not stand up for hours while we did our thing that day. And it's like, here's this elderly, I would say mid 70s, maybe late 70s woman who drove from another state, made posters for other people in case they didn't have one, came there with her cane, her walker cane deal, and refused to not stand up for hours. And then Congress can't stand up for 1 minute. For 1 minute, not one member. Even if they said, "I'm going to certify the votes, but I'm certifying the votes and I want it to be known, I think this presidency is catastrophic to our democracy. I think it's the end of America as we know it." Even just say something. It was the most spineless display I've ever seen. And I was heartbroken and disappointed and pissed off. And I've fought for these people. I mean, every cycle, I mean, I mentioned multiple times, I'm a stand-up comic. I don't have $1 million to donate, but I donate my time. Every election cycle, I do free fundraiser shows for progressive candidates that I believe in. This election cycle, I did it for 17 candidates. That's 17 shows I did not get a dime for, and I could really use the money. And I've driven to other cities. I just, as one American of modest means and modest influence, I just did what I could. And I've supported this party every election and for years, for decades. And it's so disappointing to see them just give literally no resistance at all. It's fascinating. And I believe wholeheartedly that anyone in the Democratic Party who's unwilling to do something right now deserves to be primary. We have to tear the party to the studs and rebuild it with real Americans with backbones that will stand up against fascism. Because otherwise, we're done. And more importantly, maybe there's not even primaries in 2 years. I think it's real possible there's not. I think
Yep.
if this is
Yeah,
allowed
you and I have both said we think it's incredibly naive to think we have any normal election coming up.
Yeah, I think this is day one. He's going to sign. They've already said it. They've said it. Day one, they're doing deportation stuff. Day one, they're signing all these executive orders. Project 2025. I mean, this is a guy who told his constituents, "I don't know anything about Project 2025." Now he's hired every single person that wrote it. He told his constituents their taxes were going to go down. He's already released his tax plan, and they're all going up unless you're very wealthy. Your taxes are going up, and the taxes of the people price gouging you to death are going down drastically in a way that will add $5 trillion to the national debt, in addition to the 8 trillion he already added last time. So the fact that these people think they're fiscal conservatives is one of the most laughable things in political reality today. It's mind blowing.
Yeah, we definitely can go over all of the insanity and the insane beliefs that anybody would have that these people are on their side. And by the way, Cliff, I see this as a real opportunity for a coalition of humanity, to be honest with you. Like the MAGA that are going to wake up and learn the hard way, the way I did,
100%.
and the Democrat base who like us is like, where the hell are you? What the hell just happened? I wanted to share a clip with you in the audience from an interview I did this weekend with Dino Badala on Sirius XM, because it's right in line with what you said about accountability for the Democrats.
Conversations now about Democratic leaders and what people who listen to your show, what they want to see, what they want to be hearing going forward on not just this issue, but the whole being a fighter.
Yeah, absolutely. Dean, I think this is a really serious dividing line. You know, one thing I said about 14th Now is people are going to look back to this very moment, this very window of time, January 6th, basically 2025, as the dividing line between freedom and fascism. And very unfortunately, listen, I have been one of the biggest cheerleaders for the Democratic Party, Kamala Harris, et cetera, even though I have my differences, notably on the Middle East, you know, friggin' genocide going on under their watch. But I have been the biggest cheerleaders for these people, understanding that our choice was binary. These are the people for democracy. The other team is fascism and autocracy. Binary choice. These people had that opportunity right now, and they abandon us. They abandon us. They are essentially, and I haven't probably had this conversation on my show as blatantly as I am telling you right now, Dean, but they are no longer on our sides. They are no longer on, this Democratic Party needs accountability just as much as anyone else, because if they're out there posturing for democracy, going up in hearings and getting their sound bites over the next 4 years to try to, you know, good luck, get reelected in some semblance of an election that we're going to have again in this country. And they're not willing to do the work for democracy. We can't count on these people. They have abdicated their oath. They themselves have abdicated their oath. They continued the coup on January 6th by not objecting to this man. As you said, objecting on this basis, I mean, my God, if we had a 34-year-old, at least we'd be safe. But for God's sakes, we're installing a Russian asset who has no allegiance to the Constitution. It's pretty friggin' serious. So there's got to be some serious accountability for these Democrats moving forward. I think that the people need a voice, and the people are going to have to really take back this conversation right now, because clearly the people in power on both sides have completely let us down. So, Cliff, I know you have thoughts on a number of things I mentioned there. Maybe you can take us on the Russian thread.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with everything you said. It's gut-wrenching and heartbreaking and infuriating. Yeah, and as far as him being a Russian asset, I mean, it's shocking to me that anyone doesn't recognize the gravity of it, including Democrats. You know, I realize that people in government, I would think that a large portion of them get it. Certainly people in military intelligence, top brass military, stuff like that, three-letter agencies. But Republicans are just denying it altogether. I had a guy on my social media yesterday said, "You've been brainwashed by a CIA psyop to make you hate Trump." And I was like, dude, nobody needs a psyop to hate a guy who is a lifelong con man and rapist and philanderer and liar and hate monger. Like, he's very hateable without a psyop. But it's like, it's such a fascinating paradox that you think I'm being brainwashed. You think that a lifelong con man rapist is a Christian, and that Jeffrey Epstein's best friend came to save the children, and the guy is currently selling you a USA Bible that's printed in China, and you think that other people are stupid. But the Russia stuff, I mean, when you lay it out as a timeline, it's like, somebody please debate me on it. Nobody ever will. I challenge people all the time on social media, come debate me. Instead of insulting me in the comments, show me how smart you are and debate me on these political points. But, you know, I believe it was 1987 when Trump went to Moscow for the first time. He came back and immediately put newspaper ads in the biggest newspapers in the country, basically with this same message that he's spewing today, that our allies are taking advantage of us and hurting us, and really the people that we think are our enemies aren't really our enemies. And that's when it started. As far as a tangible beginning to the timeline, in my opinion, it's that, and his first wife being the daughter of a KGB agent.
Yeah, and that was, as you're describing, that was a Russian op. That op-ed was written for him by Russian operatives.
100%, 100%. And it just never stopped. I mean, that was kind of the beginning of it that we know of, because that's a tangible kind of dog ear to start with.
Yeah.
But you can look at the whole timeline, and I can't. We don't have time in this show or 10 more shows to talk about it, because there's that much of it. But one of the, I'll mention a couple of high points that really stand out to me, that I think people in our movement who feel how we feel should do their best to memorize and be able to talk about with people. And I think that's going to be a big part of moving forward. I know it's very hard to reach these people. I'm not encouraging you to be nice to them necessarily. I'm not even encouraging you to let them stay in your life. But when you do have these conversations, I'm encouraging you, I'm imploring you, fucking win them, excuse my language, win the conversation. Because what's happening now is they're screaming lies while we whisper the truth. They're running down the field with nunchucks in both hands, and we're still listening to the referee, and it's embarrassing. We have to stop playing by rules that haven't existed in a decade. And that's what Biden and Congress are doing right now. They're, well, if we stopped him, it'd be against the rules. First of all, it'd be very much in line with the rules. And secondly, stop playing nice. Like, they're toppling our democracy. But some of the things that stick out is like the Russian points, when he lost everything in his casino debacle, which I would argue, did he really go bankrupt, or were all those losses ways to launder money for Russians? I think that's something people should really consider. But when he got to, kind of zero on paper, and it at least looked like he was destitute, the Russians set up this branding company for him. I don't have the name of the company in front of me, but it's very easy to find. And that was when he started putting his name on everything. Trump sneakers, or not Trump sneakers then, that was later, but Trump neckties, Trump steak, Trump water, Trump vodka, Trump wine, all of which failed. Again, did they really fail, or were all of these ways to launder money? Because you'll never convince me that these $100,000 gold watches are not a way to launder money from malicious players around.
Yeah,
around
I think the NFT was one of the early indications after he left office last time that he was laundering money.
100%. And this whole thing, everybody is about to think he's a hero for saving TikTok, and I'm on it. But yeah, sure, it's very likely that it's a Chinese operation, and it's an intelligence operation. Sure, I would never dispute the possibility of that. But he was very much against it until one of the biggest investors of TikTok put $1 billion into the company that owns Truth Social, which, by the way, makes about as much as a Papa John's pizza location.
Yeah.
But anyway, so when they built the branding company, Trump Steaks, Trump Water, Trump Shuttles, all of that, and Trump got a fraction of the income from those licensing deals. And the CEO of that was Felix Sater, Felixsater. I know you know who it is, but a lot of people may not. If you Google the guy, Google him, the first line on his Wikipedia page says, Felix Sater is a Russian criminal. You know what I mean? It's like, Felix, you ought to try and get that edited, buddy. But
he also became an FBI informant.
100%, and CIA, I believe.
Yeah.
But absolutely a Russian criminal.
Yes.
Father is Russian mafia, ties to Kremlin, ties to all the worst oligarchs. And he was one of the ends with Putin, between Michael Cohen and Putin, but he became the CEO of Trump's licensing branding company. And it's like, that one thing should have disqualified him from being a county commissioner, let alone president. That one thing. And then there's 100 things in between then and the 2016 campaign. But in 2016, he hired Paul Manafort to be his campaign manager, a guy who at the time owed Oleg Deripaska $60 million. Despite owing Oleg Deripaska $60 million, one of the most dangerous and vile Russian oligarchs, arguably, he went to work for Trump for free. Huh. That's kind of bizarre that anybody 60
Generous,
million in debt would volunteer. So and Manafort's job right before working for Trump was to be the campaign manager for Viktor Yanukovych, who was elected in Ukraine and was then run out of office for being a Russian asset. He literally was forced out of office by his people. He killed 100 Ukrainians, and then he fled to Russia because he was a Russian asset. So this guy gets a Russian asset into the presidency in Ukraine. Next job is getting a Russian asset into the White House in the United States. Anybody that can't see that and see how problematic and utterly disqualifying it is mentally ill. You're stupid also, but you're not just stupid, you're mentally ill. This is a mass mental illness that we're dealing with in this country. And none of us have ever seen anything like it in our lives.
Yeah, well, Cliff, I describe it as hypnosis and mental malpractice. I mean, it's like a vast, widespread hypnosis of the American people.
It's unbelievable. It's terrifying. And so, what we're seeing now is all of this stuff that's happening, all of it, every single thing that seems bizarre and seems like just incompetence, putting a Fox News host with really, really nominal military credentials to be the head of the Secretary of Defense. That's not just because Trump's dumb and incompetent. It's to destabilize the military. Putting Tulsi Gabbard, who is a Russian asset, according to her own party, and to Russia. Russia calls her a Russian asset. Mitt Romney called her a Russian asset. Her former staffers called her a Russian asset. Putting her as head of national intelligence is to destabilize intelligence. Every one of these things is to either destabilize that department because the person is compromised by Russia, or to destabilize that branch of the government because the person is just incompetent and a simpleton and somebody that's easily manipulated, like the IRS guy who has no tax experience and no law experience. And all of this is an effort to destabilize the economy, destabilize the military, destabilize intelligence, destabilize every branch of government, while starting trade wars with our closest neighbors, pissing off NATO, that maybe we just get ejected from NATO without having to leave voluntarily, and then these territories that are only really valuable to Russia, Greenland and Panama and all of that. So when you look at what's happening through the scope of the historical connection to Russia, it's plain as day. And it seems to me like a lot of people on the right, because they don't really know any real information, they go, well, is Russia really that bad? And is it really that bad that we're being allies with Russia? And again, I don't have enough time to express how stupid that is. But Vladimir Putin's not your pal. He's not coming to your birthday party. He's not going to go deer hunting with you. He wants to destroy your country and you. But the fact that we're allowing this country, who's not really even strong, that's the thing. Russia has 3 times the inflation that we have, and it's probably higher because they don't report their stuff accurately. They're a military economy. They make nothing. They export nothing. They have no real economic value. We have no trade relations with them. So people on the right want to say China is our biggest threat, and I won't argue that China is not a threat, but they're also our biggest trade partner. It would destroy their economy if they stopped trading with the United States. So in that regard, it's in their best interest to at least pretend to be amicable and to maintain trade relations no matter what happens. Russia doesn't have any of that going for them. They have literally nothing to lose, and they're getting their asses handed to them in Ukraine, which is why they had to borrow 10,000 troops from North Korea. You don't have to borrow troops from another country when things are going well. And they're getting their asses kicked because we're helping Ukraine. So it's like, it's one thing to bow down to some other country because you think they have strength or they somehow could overpower you. But all Russia is really beating us with is disinformation, tricking meathead simpletons like Joe Rogan into parroting their disinformation over and over and over into the empty skulls of simple people that then go parrot it to their cousins that they're married to and stuff like that. So it's fascinating to see, and I'm not surprised that Americans are this stupid, but I am disappointed and heartbroken. And
It's
I'm
very
not.
disappointing. Let me just say this clip. I've shared this like years ago, but I'm gonna share it again now. When I was in that vortex of Russian propaganda, otherwise known as Fox News, I, for a period of time, and I say this as an educated person, someone who graduated at the top of my class, who cares about freedom and human rights and animals and the environment. Like, I've always been this person. And yet I was so brainwashed by Fox News and their defamation and slander of good faith public servants that I thought for a period of time that Putin was better than some of our democratic leaders for the very reason, and it was just a complete cognitive dissonance, but it was for the reason you're describing, that they portray him as someone strong when so many in our country are weak. Okay. And
Yeah.
actually, I mean, it's ironically and tragically on point with how we're describing the Democrats at the top of the show today. But
Yeah.
that's how they portray him. They portray him as somebody strong when our country has so many weak people. And you think maybe, and as gaslit and screwed up as that is, and as much as I, of course, now realize there is absolutely no reason to admire Putin, and he is not a strong man. It's a pretext of power, just like for Trump, it's a pretense of power. But you think that the Democrats in this country just might take a cue that people like the appearance of strength, not to
Sure.
mention actual strength, and actually exercise and demonstrate some strength once in a while.
Yeah, and I think that's, if there's any hope of saving the country or the party, that has to be it. It's like, and we have those people in Congress, but they're not being strong right now. I
No,
mean, people
no.
like Yasmin Crockett and
Yeah,
Jimmy Raskin and Eric
I know.
Swalwell. I mean, we've got some smart, eloquent, well-spoken, with powerful voices that are intellectually tough, and it's like, hey, we need you right now to show that toughness.
Yeah.
And it's kind of fascinating that none of them did. It's not fascinating that they didn't all get together, but it very much surprises me that not a single one spoke up. And I just wonder if they all got the memo. Hey, you better not say anything. I don't know what's happening, and maybe we'll never know.
No,
But it,
I think without revealing confidential information that has been shared with me, I do think they got the memo. And I think it was very much a concerted collective effort to do nothing, which is not an excuse for any single one of them. I
totally.
don't give any single one of them a pass. The ones that I have enjoyed platforming on the show in the past, I am utterly disappointed with them, and frankly, will give them very little credence moving forward when they ever try to say, oh, I think there was an interview with Jamie Raskin maybe last night or sometime this week on Chris Hayes, and he was talking about standing up for the Constitution. I'm like, Representative Raskin, where the hell were you on January 6th? Where
Yeah.
was all of that talk, that clarity, that standing up for the rule of law? He's a constitutional scholar. What happened, Jamie Raskin? It's like, one of our co-organizers describes the Congress people now as the Stepford wives, because it's like these people are all just possessed. What happened to them?
Yeah, and in the minuscule chance that they do something at the 25th hour, I'll apologize to every one of them individually if that happens.
Exactly.
But it sure doesn't look like that's going to happen. And I also want to say to people too, because I think this is something that, not in the vein of the Russia connection, people talk about Elon Musk. He's an idiot. He lost $44 billion on Twitter. But what everybody doesn't realize is he financed Twitter with money from Russian oligarchs. He didn't lose $44 billion. Russia invested $44 billion, and it was a damn good investment. I'm not calling him a genius. I don't think he is. I think he's a rich kid like Trump that made a little bit better investments. He bought, solar panels and electric cars, and Trump bought teenage girl pageants because he's a pedophile and Jeffrey Epstein's best friend. But I do think Elon Musk is a Russian asset as well. And everybody talks about him being the richest man on earth. He's not. Vladimir Putin is the richest man on earth because he jailed the richest man in Russia and then took everything he had and then he basically took all the resources of the country. He just kind of owns anything worth owning in Russia, and the citizens are just kind of on their own, despite what Tucker Carlson may tell you, who's also a Russian asset.
Yeah,
And
Cliff, I wish people would really look to countries like Russia and maybe countries in a little slightly less of a severe position like Hungary, to the people of these countries who have seen the onset of autocracy and are watching us with like, oh my God, do you Americans not recognize what is happening to you as it is happening? Like,
Yeah.
you know, I have quite a few friends who come from places like Russia and Belarus, and the only way, as you described, their economy sucks. Their economy is terrible. The
Yeah.
only way to survive in these places is basically through crime. It's like, how much crime are you willing to engage in to appease those in power, to stay in the good graces of those in power? And if you're not, then good luck, you know, surviving. And that's why it's such a, you know, sad place to be right now. Places, not to mention, you know, going to prison if you dare donate to a political candidate who is not Vladimir Putin or his puppet, or speak out in any way, shape, or form that's not in line with their narrative, and go to prison or get poisoned for it. So, I mean, I just don't feel like Americans understand, or we understand, but all of a sudden the media, the pro-democracy space, has just conveniently forgotten to remind us of the very, very serious position that we're all in.
Yeah, I mean, Vladimir Putin is a murderous dictator who blew up an apartment building of his own citizens to take power. And he's held power by manipulating every election, by changing laws, by killing journalists, by jailing and killing anybody that's adversarial to him, and plane crashes and window falls and poisonings. And he put Alexei Navalny in a Siberian work camp, and the guy finally just died from being just treated so poorly. And that's who the right, that's who they like. They like him more than they like me or you. And as far as Hungary goes, Viktor Orban is directly pulling strings and financing the Heritage Foundation. So all these people, this is a Christian foundation. It's like, no, that's being financed by an autocrat dictator who is close friends with Putin. This is all Russia. And even Newsmax is financed in large part by Qatar, who Pam Bondi is a foreign agent for. She lobbies for Qatar and gets paid $115,000 every month to lobby for Qatar. And now she's going to be the most powerful law enforcement officer in the United States. And even Fox News, Rupert Murdoch is married to the ex-wife of a Russian oligarch. Her son-in-law is a Russian oligarch. The party is riddled with Russian influence like cancer, and it needs to be cut out or just annihilated. It's and if that doesn't happen, we're done. And if our government won't do it, the citizens are going to have to do it, and that's where it starts to get real scary. And I don't want to sound like a nut, because I'm not. I'm a real sane. I'm a zany fella. I like to have a good time and all that. But I'm not mentally ill. I'm not crazy.
No, and by the way, Cliff, that is, let me just like tell our viewers right now, this is part of the reason why I've been continued to be so outspoken about Midas Touch. Like, they literally did a hit job on my scholarly reporting about 2 to 3 weeks ago, literally calling me somebody who engages in magical thinking or fantasy or delusional. They did a hit job on me without calling me by name. And by the way, we're forced to do incessant continued reporting on the 14th Amendment because of our work on Lights On, and tried to discredit it and cast me as some like delusional person. So yeah. I'm gonna get this straight and be clear about who's delusional and who's not. And you think I'm not going to stand up for myself, you got something else coming for you. So sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Cliff.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I got that like you got it from Midas Touch. I got it from like fans and followers of mine on social media, because the day after the election, I was online saying, I had a bunch of videos that got over 1 million views, and they all got taken down one after the other. But I had a little video series that just said, "I don't buy it, part 1," and I made like 10 of them. Most of them got taken down from different platforms, but and what I was saying was, I'm sure stuff that you've said as well. You expect me to believe that the first Republican to win all 7 swing states in 4 decades is the guy who overturned Roe versus Wade and suffered for it in the primaries just 2 years ago. I'm pretty confident women in this country didn't forget. If Kentucky and Florida and Ohio and these other red and purple states can pass ballot measures to protect women's reproductive rights, I'm pretty sure that that guy didn't win all 7 swing states after overturning abortion rights and a coup and 91 felonies, 2 rape charges, 34 felony convictions, 34 civil fraud felony convictions, and so on and so forth. His rallies were poorly attended. His speeches were embarrassing. And here's the thing that people need to understand too, because I know people are still skeptical about election anomalies, mostly because they haven't done any research to actually understand them. This is a guy who's cheated on everything he's ever done. He came out of the womb cheating. He's a cheater and a liar. He doesn't know how to tell the truth. He doesn't know how to be ethical or honest. It's beyond the scope of his mental and emotional luggage. He doesn't have it. He doesn't possess it. He cheats on his own golf tournaments at his own golf courses. He lied to the world about how much he weighs, and we all knew he was lying, and we all laughed about it. This guy, he cheated in the 2016 election. Russia helped him in 2016. In 2020, he had fake electors and an attack on the Capitol. And I want to say this too before I forget. January 6th, people go, if it was an insurrection, people would have been armed. First of all, they were. People were arrested for having guns. Second of all, the reason most of them didn't have guns is because Donald Trump tried all day to get the magnometers removed so that people could get in there with guns. And luckily, law enforcement didn't humor him on that. He wanted them to have their guns. That's what every American needs to remember. This guy wanted the trailer goblins to attack our Capitol with their guns. And you'll never convince me that all these people who don't have anything in their lives except guns showed up that day without their guns on out of their just being cautious. That's not what happened. They were all communicating with walkie-talkies and chat apps and all that, and the word was sent around, hey, there's magnometers, you're not going to get it if you have guns.
Yeah, I'm from Northern Virginia, Cliff, and I know that Comfort Inn in Ballston very well, where they were storing all of their ammunition. It was highly reported. They were storing it in that Comfort Inn that's just a few miles from Key Bridge. It takes you into Washington, D.C. So they absolutely were prepared.
But, and people on the left and the right calling us QAnon or whatever, it's like, I'm not getting my information from Mr. Pillowman or a washed up, mentally ill 85-year-old attorney with hair dye running down his face who married his cousin. That's not where we're getting our information from. We're getting it from constitutional scholars. We're getting it from election security professors, people who have studied election security their entire lives, people who have studied cybersecurity their entire lives, and teach it to people. They're so knowledgeable that they teach it to other people. That's who we're getting our information.
Exactly. And that's who I've been platforming on this show from the get-go. I've had, emeritus professors who founded this computer security department at their university. I have had the head of election security at Free Speech for People, who, by the way, had her on just yesterday again, talking through very logical. You could not listen to our conversation and think this is blue anon or conspiracy. This is a very reasoned, logical explanation about why our elections are so vulnerable. And by the way, go check it out. I have reason to believe that my numbers on this channel may be being suppressed. So please go check it out. If you didn't get a notification for it, go watch that interview with Susan Greenhalgh of Free Speech for People. Also, listen to the interview I did a week and a half ago with Nathan Dyer, who is with us at 14th Now and has started the Election Truth Alliance to try to really get to the bottom of this and hopefully have the support and legal standing to bring lawsuits to demonstrate that his statistical and data analysis is actually showing manipulation, because it sure as hell looks like it. So yeah, absolutely, this is not conspiracy. And that's why I think, when you think about how vital this conversation is to our future and what's about to happen, that's why I am so unforgiving for anyone with a platform to have ignored this conversation or shut it down.
1000%.
And you know what? By the way, let me just give a shout out to the individual creators on Midas Touch, because I don't hold them accountable. There's some really great people there, but network wide, to be told, as I was, if they are, and you got to believe they are because they haven't reported any of this stuff, that these topics were off limits and that they were just shut down out of the gate as conspiracy, when, as you are saying, Cliff, they know, they've been telling their audience for 8 years that Donald Trump is a con artist.
Sure.
Why would it not make sense that he cheated this time, or that at least that we should have the clarity to make sure and to look into it?
And here's the thing. It's like, we know for sure that Russia helped him in 2016. Our own FBI told us that. We know for sure that he tried to cheat in 2020 with fake electors, with the January 6th attack, pressuring Republican election officials to find him 11,740 whatever votes. He did that in multiple states. He did everything he could in multiple states, despite having 3 different election auditing companies, entities that he hired, tell him that there was no voter fraud. His own attorney general, 62 judges, and he still kept pushing. So we know for a fact he tried to cheat in the other 2 elections, and that he cheats in everything he does, including his families, his taxes, his real estate, his businesses, everything. So in order to think that he didn't cheat this election, you have to believe one of 2 things. You have to believe that he suddenly developed character and integrity and a moral compass. And if you believe that, you're one of the dumbest people alive. Or you have to believe that it's physically impossible. And we have experts telling you to your face, as often as you'd like to hear it, it's not impossible. Here's how, here's why. Elon Musk said it wasn't impossible, that anything can be hacked. He said in one interview, if Trump didn't win, he was going to jail. And he also knew about the election results hours before. And maybe it was Elon, maybe it wasn't. Trump has these MAGA loyalist election officials in every swing state who said years before this election that they wouldn't certify anything that wasn't a Trump win. And they've all refused to acknowledge Biden's win in 2020, and they're still election officials. So, you have to believe that a guy who's never not cheated decided to suddenly not cheat, or that it was impossible. And neither of those things are true. And Americans just want to believe in our elections, and I want to too. But even if you believe the numbers are what they are, and I think that you're woefully naive if you do, even if you do believe that, they called in bomb threats. They burned ballot boxes. They bombarded half the country with disinformation for years. They paid podcasters like Tim Pool, who should be in jail. He sure as shit shouldn't still be making a podcast. They were paying Tim Pool $100,000 an episode to make his podcast and telling him exactly what to say. And it was all Russian disinformation. And that's proven. That's proven by our FBI. So that's not a free and fair election. That is cheating. Even if you think that the actual ballot counting is 1,000% foolproof, they still cheated. So in my humble opinion, he's never won a U.S. election because Russia has helped him cheat every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%, 100%. I usually do this at the end, but I want to do it with you here just because it's in line with so many of the things you're saying and get your reaction. I'm going to share a few comments that we recently had. And this one, I don't think it's only women, but it's in line with the comment you made earlier about that wonderful woman who didn't want to sit down at the protest. This says, I feel like it's only us women who are ready to throw the checkerboard here. I cannot understand why are we marching straight into the fire with our eyes wide open? What the fuck are we doing as a country? Why are you the only person, and I'm not the only one, but thank you. Why are you the only person who seems to feel like I do? And I recall feeling the same exact thing while sitting in a yoga teacher training where they were trying to convince us we could change the weather with yoga. I looked around a room full of educated people, many far more intelligent and successful than myself, and realizing, holy crap, this is a cult. We know MAGA is a cult, but why are Dems unable to fight back? They seem mirrored into their submissive position despite the danger it poses. More wait and see, more let the corrupt courts fix it. Bullshit. We cannot keep doing what has failed over and over again. Time to fight fire with fire and know we did whatever it took to save our world. I know you want to talk, but let me just give one more, because it's like the same thing from a gentleman who shared this with me out of Connecticut. He wrote this to Senators Murphy and Blumenthal. This madness has to stop. We are in the United States of America, and there absolutely seems to be nowhere to turn for help in resolving these gross injustices. This feeling is intensifying, and we feel we are trapped in a sealed box with absolutely no way out. This collective feeling of helplessness is devastating and highly counter to the pursuit of freedom and happiness that the Constitution calls out. The Constitution is only as good as the people who have sworn an oath to protect and defend it. If Democrats are afraid of recrimination from MAGA, they need to realize they will be setting us up for making the country's divide increasingly more pronounced and severe for the democracy supporters, to the point of ultimate frustration and a catastrophic, full-fledged or close to it civil war and total devastation of our once free and fair, beautiful democracy. It's not magical thinking. This is a very real possibility of what may be coming for us.
Well, and this is what they did in Ukraine. I mean, Russia was trying to play puppeteer to Viktor Yanukovych, and it was working. He was doing their bidding. He was very much going to just let them roll in and take the country, and the citizens had to run him out of their country. And now they've been in a war for however many years, where they've lost 100,000 of their citizens. So, I don't know that what Russia's military capabilities are as far as coming here, but this is what they're doing. They're putting a Russian asset into our presidency, and if our government won't stop them, then it's now going to be up to the citizens to stop them, and that's obviously going to be really insane and destructive and nightmarish and hellish. And I think that a lot of Americans don't think that that can happen because it never has. So many countries around the world. I mean, Syria, Putin helped Assad kill 500,000 of his own people. And people talk about Gaza and how much of a nightmare it is. And it is a nightmare. And Netanyahu should die in prison for being a fucking war criminal. I think he should be the new CEO of United Healthcare. But Assad killed 500,000 of his own people, and Putin helped. 5 million people were displaced. 5 million refugees had to leave Syria. And then, we see what's happening in Gaza. We see what's happened in Yemen. And not so long ago in modern geopolitical history, we saw what happened in the world wars in different allied countries in Europe. So, and obviously what we've had a hand in disrupting and destabilizing in Central America. And for anybody watching that's kind of likes to do the both sides stuff and talk about America's sins, I'm acutely aware of America's sins. I know all about MK Ultra. I know all about the Gulf of Tonkin and Desert Shield and Operation Paperclip and Operation Business Plan, all of it. I've researched all of it. But I'm an American and I'm rooting for my country. I know we're not perfect, but this is the country I live in, and I'd like us to win. But I think a lot of Americans think that because that type of war and destruction hasn't happened on our soil, that it can't. And I'm here to tell you that sadly it can, and I think it's very likely that it's going to. And I don't like saying this, and I don't say it lightly, and I don't say it flippantly. I say it with sincerity and dread. You need to arm yourselves. Everyone watching this, you need to arm yourselves, and you need to be proficient with whatever it is that you arm yourself with. You need to have a strong network of people, and you need to have each other's backs, and you need to have plans for best and worst case scenarios, because the reality is none of us know what's going to happen. If he is somehow prevented from taking office, it will result in chaos. If he is allowed to take office, it will also result in chaos. When you deport the people that pick, wash, package, and ship all of your produce, it destabilizes your country. When you pass tariffs on every good your country imports, it destabilizes your country. When you start trade wars with your neighbors and allies, all these things are going to destabilize this country to the point that you have never experienced unless you're 120 years old. It's going to be shocking to the system, and you need to do everything you can to prepare for a worst case scenario, including, I never thought I'd say this in this country, but grow your own food, buy non-perishable food, figure out a backup water source, figure out what you'll do if satellites go down and you can't use phones and navigations and contacts and internet. Arm yourself, know your neighbors, have each other's backs, all of it. Because if it gets as bad as I fear that it can, you're going to need to know and be prepared for all of those things.
Well, Cliff, as my viewers know well, I am a person of faith, and I am always arming myself with spiritual armor, the real spiritual armor, not the MAGA Christian nationalism spiritual
Right.
armor, but the real stuff. And if I can be any testimony, I will tell you that has served me beautifully over the past 7 years as I have battled and defeated Donald Trump and stared down his bullying when nobody thought that I could succeed. So, but I'm all with you on contingency plans, 100%. Be wise. Defend yourself, your family. I also, maybe if we can just bring this full circle to the way I felt literally the day after the election. And that is that this is a real opportunity for common humanity, for us to see and turn to bonds that we may not have expected to forge before, because ultimately we're not against each other. It is these corrupt, powerful forces that are trying to divide us. But really, most Americans are after the same thing. And so I'm looking to that common humanity, and unsurprising, unlikely, I'm not here to shame Meg. I've never been here to do that. We can call out the stupidity.
I'm sorry.
I know you are. And I'm all for exposing the insanity and the gaslighting and projection and all of that. But ultimately, there's always space, as far as I'm concerned, for people to come to the light. And I think that there's going to be a lot of that, because like I said, it's going to be a hard wake up call when these people realize that the man that they support doesn't give a shit about them.
Yeah. And it's like, what else has to happen for you to realize that?
Yeah.
I always say when I'm debating someone, I go, listen, I know I haven't earned your trust. I haven't sold you any gold sneakers. I didn't sell you a USA Bible made in China. I know it's hard to trust me. But yeah, I mean, I am pissed off. I am angry, and it's real hard for me to hide that. I grew up in a very Southern conservative upbringing, and I've seen loud ignorance win out over quiet intellect, and I've seen the kind of dirt road, unearned arrogance that yells out of a pickup truck window. And
Yeah.
I have a deep disdain for that
Oh, I
fake
know.
strength, that fake
Me too.
strength. And Donald Trump is just that with more decimals in his bank account. He's just a sort of a white trash guy that will yell at you out of a pickup truck and keep going. He's a coward. He's small, fear-filled, spineless coward pretending to be a tough guy. And I hate to use the word hate, but I hate that energy. And I do agree that there are some normal Americans who just have absolutely no real grasp of political realities that just go, well, he seems good and he got shot and he still ran and I like that and my taxes are going to go down, because we know more about football than we do about our own country. I get that there's some normal people, and I do hope they'll come back over to our side. But we also have to face the sobering reality that there are MAGA people who are dying to mow down any liberal with an assault rifle. I see them on social media all the time. They very much want violence. They talk about it all the time. They possess a deep-seated hatred and bigotry and racism. And at the core of all of this is white supremacy. People would rather vote for a convicted felon, rapist, con man who's white than a prosecutor, attorney general, senator, vice president who is mixed race.
Yeah, there is definitely that, Cliff. There is definitely that. And I see, listen, you would believe the kind of threats that have come out towards me on the X platform, the Twitter platform, just since I have done this reporting on the 14th Amendment and election anomalies. And I've chosen not to platform it, but it's extremely threatening. It's extremely threatening. I think it's illegal, the level of harassment that it is. Let's see if Elon Musk will decide to take it down.
Well, if there's any that are particularly unsettling, feel free to DM those to me, and I can send those to a FBI connection that I've been sending stuff to.
Will do. We'll gladly do that. I'm so grateful to have you here. I was so grateful that you were part of 14th Now. I wish you could have stayed with us the whole weekend, but listen, my friend, we made history. Our entire movement made history. And for all of our alarm and concern, I hope that you and I hope that our audience takes peace in standing in the light and being on the right side of history and on the side of truth when it mattered most, because that's an incredibly powerful place to be.
Yeah. I'd like to say one more thing directly to the viewers. In addition to prepping yourself, arming yourself, I want you to really do your best to memorize some really practical, common sense argument winners. And I think the thing to appeal to with MAGA is whatever sense they have left of patriotism. I don't think that you're going to win them with compassion and empathy, because I think those things are out the window. I don't even think that you can appeal to their Christianity, because I don't think that that's real in most cases, and it's out the window. But I think they do still think that they're patriots. And I think this the conversation of him being a Russian asset is a really important and powerful one for that reason. And they go, oh, Russia, 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 Russian hoax. And you need to be able to come back and say, or do you mean the Russian hoax like the Mueller probe that returned 19 arrests and 32 other indictments? Do you mean the Russia hoax like his campaign manager that went to prison for failure to register as a Russian asset and worked for a Russian agent right before working for him? You need to memorize these talking points and be able to own those conversations, specifically around Russia and whatever patriotism these people have left. And I also just want to encourage people on social media to, especially on Inauguration Day, if you choose to log off Meta platforms, I don't blame you. But if you stay on, I want everybody to really circulate stuff about Trump. January 6th imagery of police officers being trampled, articles about his rape and sexual assault allegations, articles about the 13-year-old Epstein sex slave that he was accused of raping. Anything that you can find about Trump. I would love to see the internet bombarded with the real harsh reality of who and what this man is on his inauguration day. And of course, don't watch it. Make sure it has the worst ratings in U.S. history.
Yeah, don't watch it on mainstream media. Don't watch it on any alternative platform that is streaming it. Do not watch it. Boycott it. And I'll join you in join Cliff in encouraging you to remind everybody who Trump really is. Good idea.
Put out some sobering imagery that these people can't look away from. And lastly, do everything you can to not support companies that support Donald Trump. There are apps and websites out there that will tell you where and how to spend your money so that it's not going to billionaires who are actively funding fascism. There's an alternative for every.
Citizens for Ethics, actually, wonderful group that has been a guest many times on Lights On. They have a running tab of who supports the insurrectionist companies that have been funding the insurrectionists up and including, of course, Donald Trump. So citizensforethics.org, you can find that list. And
I think there's one called like Goods Unite Us. I've dug into this stuff so much I kind of have them memorized. But for example, Lowe's and Home Depot both gave money, unfortunately, but Home Depot is way more in his corner and in his pocket than Lowe's. Costco is way more progressive than Walmart. You know, there is an alternative for anything that you think that you have to have. There's a way to get it without supporting the MAGA cult delusion and Russian fascism being imposed on our country.
Yeah, 100%. All right. Well, thank you so much, my friend, for joining me. Less than 72 hours. Like I said, let's see some actual heroism and real strength from our Democratic leaders. They have the ability to do something.
Fingers crossed. If you guys, I know I speak for myself and probably for you, we could all use a laugh right now. I'm a stand-up comic. I've got a comedy special called The Long Road. It's on YouTube. It's got about almost 2.5 million views across clips now. So we just had it up for about 2 months, and it's doing great. It's got a lot of good reviews. It's called The Long Road. I go after everybody from Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene to the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. The callback in comedy, the callback is the joke you keep telling. The callback and throughout the entire special is that Mike Johnson is gay. So Please watch it and enjoy it. And that's why he's such a bigot. When people are that bigoted, it's because
I
they're
know.
closeted.
Yeah, a lot
Bigoted
of the
is,
Republican Party is.
oh, 100%. That's why
Yeah.
they shut down the Grinder app at the RNC.
Yeah, and I could definitely add, I can tell you it's definitely worth your time. Cliff is very funny. And that's what I love about you, Cliff, is that you're both incredibly funny and talented as a comedian and incredibly smart and well-versed on political issues. We are all multifaceted beings. I come to a lot of people on this show still think I'm a lawyer. I am not a lawyer. I'm actually, I have a degree in journalism and Spanish, but I'm an actress. That's really where my heart is. If I was doing what I really wanted to do right now, I'd be making movies. So we are all multifaceted people and artists. I love sharing the platform with another artist. So thanks so much for being here with me.
Thank you. Shine on. I appreciate what you do.
Appreciate it. Bye, Cliff. So thank you everybody so much for joining us today on Lights On. I mentioned at the top, and we went over time, but that's okay, that I wanted to share with you some amazing efforts that have been going on among the participants of 14th Now. One of them is this website called Jan 6 Peaceful Warriors, started by a woman named Anushka, beautiful, caring, fierce defender of democracy that was part of our 14th Now movement. And she just felt so inspired by what we brought together that she really wanted to just continue this community in her own way moving forward. And so she set up this website called jan6peacefulwarriors.world. jan6peacefulwarriors.world. I'll drop it into the live chat just so you make sure you get it right there. Warriors.world. Here we go. And I just encourage you to check it out. She's really a beautiful person who really cares about our democracy and fighting for the truth in our Constitution moving forward. Another thing I wanted to share with you is we had another participant who decided to take water from January 6th in Washington, D.C. in the form of snow, because if you were in D.C. on the 6th, you know it was a snowstorm. And he decided to take some fresh snow in water bottles, take it back where he lives in L.A. and share it, put it in these little vials and kind of just share it in a healing way with a little ceremony to recognize all those affected by the fires in Los Angeles. And he was actually cited in the LA Times this week for those efforts. Dale Wilcox, he was there documenting a lot of the work that we were doing over the weekend with 14th Now. So that was another really neat recognition and just kind of beautiful effort to bring light and healing with the connection to the 14th Now movement. Also, if you want to see more of the footage from 14th Now, I'm going to be putting it out this weekend. I'm going to be compiling some really excellent footage of participants and what they had to say over those 3 days. We have some excellent footage. And so please stay tuned on the Jessica Denson YouTube channel for that. I'm going to be compiling it and putting it out for all of you to see. And really excited to share that with you. Actually, that's a great counter content to the inauguration. So when boycott the inauguration and share all this amazing content from our protesters at the 14th Now protest. So thank you everybody so much as always for joining me on Lights On. If you want to support my work, you know the best way to do that is at the Jessica Denson or thejessicadenson.com/donate. That supports my work and my legal efforts, which are ongoing against the Trump campaign. And you can buy merch for Lights On at thejessicadenson.com. So thank you so much as always for that support. Be strong. As I said, take your peace because you are in the light. That is an incredibly powerful place to be. Stay there, my friends. As always, let your light shine.